Good morning.
Hello,
Juanita, do you want to say a
everyone,
few words?
and welcome. I'm Juanita Mega, Managing Director of the Intuition Academy, and I'm so pleased to have all of you join us today in our hour-long webinar. This session is actually part of In Conversations with the Academy by Intuition, and it's a space that we've actually created for all of our corporate clients and for our community to engage in topics that are topical for modern day leaders. So from AI ethics to reputation to resilience, we've really been curating insights, sharing perspectives, and engaging with all of you in the last couple of months. So today's conversation is one which is especially timely. It's navigating trust, reputation, and strategy in the age of AI. AI is no longer a tech trend. It is a leadership challenge, and the choices we make now will shape how our organizations grow, how we grow as individuals, how we are perceived, and how we build trust in a world that's rapidly changing. So we're lucky to be joined by Gerry Griffin today for our hour-long webinar. He'll be leading today's session, and Gerry is one of our associate faculty members of the Academy by Intuition. So we'll have him introduce himself in a little while. So as we go, I would love to have you join our conversation. So please feel free to type your questions in the chat, and we will answer it as we go along. So we'd love to hear from you, and thank you for being here again. Gerry, I'll hand it over to you.
Many thanks, Juanita, and good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, everybody. Lovely to be here. As was indicated, we've got what is hopefully going to be an interactive discussion today. I'm happy here to sit and read slides, but the reality is that we are in the participation age. So let's use the chat area, raise your hands, and we've got quite a broad topic to cover today. I am going to drill down into a couple of components within that, of course. My background was a former director of London Business School and taught there. I've written some books. I've also had a startup that built its own large language model, AI, from scratch. So, but I also think a lot about the topic. I'm by no means the oracle on the topic, but at the same time, what I do want to share is a series of insights, observations, examples of where I think we're going. And I also want to make it practical. So I want to land on some particular calls to action that I think could be useful for you as we try and make sense of this new trend. And as Juanita said, it's here to stay now. And I do concur with that it's not just a passing fad like we have with various type cycles that go forward. So as I say, these are sort of big words, although it's a five, trust is a five-letter word, but it is a big word in terms of its impact. But I do want to drill down to some specific calls to action that may be of use to you. But do feel free to disagree. Feel free to add some links to the chat area. And as Rory said, we will then loop back with you with a copy of the recording. But I'd also like to then bundle up some of the suggestions you've made, say podcasts, books, articles, videos, things that you found useful to the topic, and we can share those with each other as well. So we can sort of co-create the presentation this morning. One of the books that I'm going to reference, I can see it just through that, is quite a big book by Francis Fukuyama, Professor Francis Fukuyama, on trust itself. And I'm going to just refer to that, but I think it's, given that it's our first proper noun here today, it's one of the reference points that I'm going to make. So again, feel free to add material to the chat room as we go forward. So just here's some of the goals that I'd like to try and cover off. And I've also got my another screen open. So if I'm looking down, it's not that I'm looking at my Bitcoin price. I'm actually looking at the chat area that comes through. So do feel free to flag various points and so on. And sort of the big picture at the moment is that I feel that we're kind of confronted with this entity known as AI, and it's got so many strands to it. It starts, if you like, as a technology strand. Yeah, and we're going to look at some new research from Harvard Business Review and how we're using it today versus how we used it last year, and what trends we can take from that. So I will look at particular applications at the moment and the ramifications for that, for things like our reputation and strategy and trust and so forth. So, but it is a many tentacled entity, but it starts with technology. And I'd like to also have a poll this morning on whether we feel on balance it's a net contributor to our lives, or a net detractor from our lives. And that's not to ask you to make a value judgment about the whole thing, but just do you feel it's helping or hindering where we're going? And I'm hoping to see, a diversity of views on that, because it certainly has loads of great applications, and it also has some things of concern. I kind of noted, ironically, aside from reading books by Francis Fukuyama, I also like Michael Connelly, the detective novelist, who's just dropped a new novel about 3 days ago, The Lincoln Lawyer. And he's taking a case about how an AI driven avatar has had a deleterious impact on a teenager. I won't do spoiler for you, so I won't tell you how it goes, but it's a case around the impact of an AI avatar on a disturbed teenager. Very, very well written book, and it just came out about 2 or 3 days ago. And fascinatingly, it's also part of this as well. So it's part of our zeitgeist, and how are we going to take it and how we're going to grapple with it. And I'm also, because it's my INTJ, I think, is my Myers-Briggs profile. I always try and be practical about things. So I'm going to go to the so what of this. Can we take this forward? Can we actually apply this? What are we going to do with this information? So as I said earlier, please do ask questions, rather than me just jabbering on at you for 40 minutes. Make comments and so forth, and it'll come through on my other screen, and I'll try and accommodate the questions as they come through. And please do feel free as well to post up any links that you find useful, and as I said, we'll summarize those and loop them back to you. So let me just start with some of the big things of what we mean. I mean, at the moment, we are what's commonly known as, in the world of AI and so on. It's not really AI, of course. It's machine learning, which is a subset of it. That said, what's incredibly impressive is just the speed of computing power. And with quantum computing coming through, you're going to see that exponentially arise. So for me, the most impressive thing is actually, in a way, kind of mundane, which is just the speed of processing. Because what it's really doing is got a calculator out between 0 and 10 and making some calculations really, really, really quickly. And AI itself, if it were to really think like a human, it would need to reflect on its own activity as it's doing it. And machines need another machine to monitor it and ad infinitum. So that recursive behavior is, in fact, what human behavior and thinking and cognition is about. So as I'm presenting to you today, I might have another little part of me saying, Gerry, you're speaking too quickly, or get on with it, and so on. That self-reflective behavior, machines can't really do that. And when we get there, if we do get there, then we are in the world of AI. In the meantime, we've got something that looks like AI and behaves like it. But like looking at a wallpaper and seeing the patterns and making sort of shapes out of it, or whatever, the cognitive load is on us. So when we look at answers from ChatGPT or OpenAI or Claude or whatever, and we think, well, that's really smart. Well, it's us that is really smart, and we're making sense of the elements that are coming through. So just to be kind of clear, we're really looking more at pattern matching that's going on. So just to kind of lock in a couple of the coordinates before we set off on our journey. As I said, ChatGPT and OpenAI are particularly popular at the moment, and we'll see in a bit that last year in 2024 we were really using it as a glorified search engine. Okay, that's how we were sort of using it, because that was our past behavior. You go to Google and you look up, where can I buy an umbrella, and if in London you may need it a lot as well, and so forth. And you'll get some matching of various umbrellas, and Google will make some money by doing proximity advertising beside that, and so forth. And in a way, what ChatGPT currently at the moment is doing is calling out to APIs. So if I say, "What's the weather like?" it'll try and figure out what is it that I'm really after. And then inference bit here, that's where it's doing the actual cooking. It's pulling together the information for you, and then it'll tell you that currently it's not too bad this morning here in London. It's clear skies with a possibility of rain later. So and so far so normal, really. That's what it's doing. It's really just speeding that up and contextualizing the question so that it is going to be more accurate to my motivation and my prompt and so forth. And we're moving fairly quickly now into agentic AI. And this is more of a valet service. So you kind of basically layer on an extra series of parameters and requirements. So if we take my idea of the weather, just to have a red thread through this, and let's think about going on holidays. So your travel agent, now your AI agent, which will be coming on stream fairly quickly, I imagine, will be able to figure out what kind of weather I like being in. Do I like super hot or do I like it temperate climate and so forth? Will figure out deals for me with various airlines, can tell me visa requirements, vaccine requirements, and put together a package for me of my requirements. And then if there's a tornado, like I think there's one in near Jamaica at the moment, or a hurricane, will maybe then suggest very quickly some alternatives to what to do. So that sort of a valet, if you like, a wrapper, is where we're going on this. And to a degree, we'll be moving from the more consumer use of the ChatGPT equivalents to more the corporate use. And this is where the agents will be, I think, more important for us in the world of corporate, because the application will be provisioned for our particular set of requirements. We're working in financial services, we're working in particular regulation, we're working in different areas. The agent will be already provisioned to begin to be a valet for that particular set of requirements. And also we'll have some data persistence as well. And this is also quite important. You know, a lot of the time still on the standard versions of the AI tools that are out there, there isn't really data persistence so much. So the ability to build a composite picture of you, what you like, what you don't like, and then begin to predict things in your life and so forth. You know, that's really coming on stream now, and I think that's where both AI can be very useful to us, because it cannot be more than a search engine with go faster stripes, to being something that is part of our life. And then there's the equivalent set of concerns, which is around our privacy, data scraping, all of the things that have taken up so much of the news when it comes to social media. And all of the information that we are bequeathing, really just a small number of companies around the world. And then the question is, what are they going to do with that information? So it does have data requirements and so on. Very good. So currently in financial services, and again, some of you may want to pop up some elements on the chat area around this. These seem to be the kind of the current trends, and you know, they are really looking for automating more manual processes. So you know, very much you'll find that where you've got a lot of information or complicated information, you're using an engine to begin to parse that down, make sense of it, and to provision it for you, or to parse it for you. So I think that's currently where we're at. I mean, some of us may get, and me in particular, may get quite exercised about the value of customer service bots. I mean, the value seems to be to the provider in terms of cost reduction, rather than any real value of that. So that's where we're at the moment in terms of some of these components, and you know, using voice detection and so on for the security element of it. And the security component will be germane to our idea around strategy and trust as we go forward in our discussion this morning, because AI is more than just a technology tool like virtual reality. Who's talking about VR at the moment? I mean, Facebook was talking about it probably 18 months ago, and the metaverse, not talking about it anymore. So VR is incredibly impressive, as is blockchain, as is augmented reality, but nobody's really talking about those at the moment. So AI has moved into an area which is quite interesting, because it's also the apparatus of state security as well. So there is the equivalent of what they would call the security dilemma, where people are building an arms race of capabilities within the world of AI. So that's why I think it's really here to stay, because it is implicated in a whole series of kind of macro trends, and we're not going to have much choice about it. So to kind of cut to my end point of the day is, we may as well get on with it. Let's not question it too much, and let's do the very best with what I believe is completely inevitable. Pulling back, I think I've mentioned the valet service, and the ability to potentially provide personalized financial advice. I think could be quite powerful. Again, because it can do and manage masses of information. The ability to do very strong predictive components is quite exciting, really. And again, ESG, the environment, is carries with it such a complex set of pieces of data and such a shifting set of regulations that sometimes are quite vague, particularly here in Europe. To make sense of that for a particular organization, AI can be quite a powerful tool for doing that. So that's where you're bringing the sort of the muscle, if you like, of AI to particular tasks to break that down. Okay, so far so normal. And again, if any folks have examples of tools that they have found useful in this space already, please feel free to share to on the chat area, and we'll pull them back. So, folks, so let's get you thinking and talking now in your own areas. I'd like you and Rory and Juanita, if you can, then post up some of the points. Um, we clearly have loads of opportunities to make us better, faster, stronger with AI. And there's clearly, and we'll talk in more detail, of some challenges and risks to us as well. But before we kind of continue our dialogue, can you just post up whether you feel that on balance for yourself or your organization or whatever, do you feel that it's on the plus side or is it on the negative side? There's going to be bits of both, but on balance, where you at in your head, if you like. So if you would just post that up for us, and then when we've got a little bit of detail, Rory, if you want to just post that up on my screen, and we'll loop back to this. But that's something that I think is quite important as to where we feel we are at the moment. Because in part, when I talk with stakeholders around the world of AI in the area of strategy and reputation, their answers are probably not surprisingly based on where is their motivation. So if you've got somebody who's professionally invested in the old way of doing things, they're clearly going to see it more as a risk and so on. If people are financially, in the same way, professionally invested in an area, they're going to see it as a risk. If people are less that and they see there's a great opportunity, they go for it. They can build a new wrapper, start a new startup, do all of these cool things. The point I'm making is that where we see this really is based on where we are in terms of a career trajectory, where we are in terms of our financial and emotional capability as well. I've got two young boys that are kind of going into the workspace. I feel quite energized and excited about AI. They're kind of terrified about it. Now, you kind of think it should be the other way around. I'm the old geezer, and they're the young Turks going into this world of work, and they should be buzzed by it. But actually, they're a bit terrified, not least of which the data is showing that at the moment, the level of graduate recruitment and junior level is really abating because allegedly of AI doing some of the more earlier starter level tasks within organizations. I'm going to show you some clips on that as to whether that is the case. But certainly where we're coming from is the lens through which we look at this as well, and so forth. So again, if you want to participate in that, that would be really good. And as I said, there is a sense that AI is going to take our jobs or take some of our jobs either. And as I read recently, this is the point that's kind of clear. It's not after your jobs, but it is after your tasks. And that's a key thing, really, is that how much of our day-to-day activity is made up of tasks. And I guess as you go through your career trajectory, you start with more task-based materials, and then you move to an area of experience where that's important, and then your judgment and your insights become more important as you get more experience in that particular role. So if just a stereotype, if you like, somebody's career arc and so forth, I think the earlier you are in your career, the more task-oriented you're going to be and so forth. I'm characterizing this maybe overly simplistically, but the point I'm making is that there's definitely, as we'll see, a trend now for AI grabbing tasks off us. And we mentioned earlier about automating materials and so forth. We'll see some data in a minute that folks that are in, say, graphic design or in copywriting or in language translation, and I had a business that used a lot of those freelancers. They're seeing a huge downtick in their workflows. And if you think of what they call in England the gig economy, which is basically people who are freelancers and will come in and do a piece of work for you. If you think about that, that's quite transactional. They've come in, they're doing something, and then they leave. They're seeing quite a big challenge at the moment because AI is grabbing those tasks and then automating them. And there we go. That's life. So where do we move to? If you like, the tide is coming in. What part of the sand that we go to as well? So again, I've given you an example of agentic AI in terms of the travel agents and so on. So think of a particular series of tasks that you want to do, and then so maybe somebody wants to do some trading. So it begins to set up to help you do some day trading or do some other reg tech and so on. So what you can do basically is brief it and train it to become better and better at it. So take a particular series of tasks like keeping a view on a series of financial prices or taking a view on the particular series of regulations that may impact you. Now, you may have a service provider that does that because they're data scraping, pulling it together, making some nice slides for you and reports and sending it through. Really, agentic AI will grab that very, very quickly because a lot of this information can be in the public domain. They can pull it together. And even if we don't think that it's that good at the moment, it will get better and better at an exponential rate. And here's the other point. What you see at the moment in AI is the worst it will ever be. Okay. And it's quite impressive at the moment. And it will get better and better at an exponential rate. So if I wanted to learn how to cook better, I could give myself maybe 6 months of practice and so forth, because I'm measuring and calibrating that duration in terms of human time. AI isn't going to really work like that. It's going to move much more quickly and so forth. So the speed and the exponential rate of increase is going to be quite powerful. At the moment, it's still not as good as people when it comes to making sense of things and thinking strategically. Um, and it may never be able to do that, but it's going to get closer and closer to doing some of those things. So at the moment, it's moving through the organization and grabbing some of those early tasks that are repetitive and that can be easily automated and so forth. And we're seeing that coming through. So as I said earlier, the gig economy, this was last week in the Financial Times, you're seeing that generative AI is displacing some forms of digital work. I saw yesterday that JP Morgan is allowing staffers use chatbots to write performance reviews. That's a good example, actually, of agentic AI because it has to be provisioned for a particular set of requirements. It has to be trained not to share your information with the outside world. So that's kind of important because if you're doing performance reviews, you're going to want to make sure this isn't discoverable somewhere. So there's a series of parameters that you need to build into it that is going to obey on a continual basis. So there's a good example of dropping in an agent around the idea of staff and performance review. And then you may have some people in the HR function going, well, hey, I do that. And now it's doing it instead. So are we in a world where we're going to move over to here, which is that AI is beginning to disintermediate some of the core functions of the organization? So if that's a challenge, can we get ahead of that? And can we think, well, here's something that it isn't going to be able to do in the next 18 to 24 months, and that's something that I'm going to be really good at. So I don't always want to be down on it because, Google's folks at DeepMind, which is probably about a mile away from where I'm sitting. I can walk to it in about 15 minutes, the DeepMind office. Are doing some amazing things in mapping proteins. Again, taking massive data sets and beginning to make sense of them for genuine human progress and so on. Okay, so let me just take you back, though, and moving on to the area of strategy, to probably the key moment where machines began to be smarter than humans. Okay, and there on the left you've got Kasparov, probably one of the best chess players of all time, and apparently. I do play a bit of chess, but not very well. Apparently, there are more moves in chess than I think it's atoms in the universe or something. Anyway, point being, there's a lot of stuff for the machine to learn and so on. So here we are in 1997, and the moment where the machines are beginning to take over. And this, of course, this is IBM here in their big blue, the gentleman on the right there. Interestingly, in 1996, Kasparov easily beat Deep Blue. And then in 1997, in game 6, the chess piece, sorry, the knight was sacrificed by Deep Blue. And Kasparov got up and walked away in Game 6. This is taking place in Midtown Manhattan in 1997. And that was seen as the moment where machines are beginning to take over. Interestingly, there's a great podcast on the BBC about this game. And again, I'll post this link up. It's very, very interesting. It was actually a mistake that the computer made. It was a glitch in the programming that it made. And you might think, well, hey, is that not to Kasparov's advantage that it's made a mistake? Yes, but Kasparov's modus operandi, his way of playing against people, was he tried to get inside your head. He played the person as well as the game. And what he was doing with Deep Blue is trying to figure out does this animal work? How does this machine think? And I think he had it figured out, and it was the games were going quite evenly up to this point. But when the computer made a genuine glitch and mistake, he realized I can't understand this machine, and he got up and he walked away. And Deep Blue then begins to progress. So that's the moment where we are interested in that area where the machines move past the computers. So our corporate fears, and moving on then to what we can do about them, is really around identity. And this is why I think AI is a different proposition than, say, blockchain or virtual reality or some of the other hype cycle things we've gone through in the mid noughties. And by the way, VR is incredibly impressive, by the way. But it doesn't probably bring with it the same levels of issues of identity and trust. Because I think what we're really worried about at a level, and I've seen some of the comments there, of people seeing it as a potential upside, but needs to be managed carefully, is that it may steal our identity. There could be personal identity fraud, of course, which can be a bit scary. We'll look at that, an example of that in a second. But it hits us at quite a human level because for us to navigate our daily and work lives, there are certain things that we base our trajectory on, one of which is consistency. And Francis Fukuyama's book on trust is that trust is really about levels of consistency against shared norms. But if in fact AI is playing with our sense of identity, what is real and what is not real, it does impact the idea of trust. It does present genuine challenges to us at a corporate level if people can mimic what we do. And there isn't really a rule book yet, but maybe we can start this conversation today on how we actually, what do we do about that? How do we manage through that? So I'm going to offer you in the next 15 minutes some things that I think we can do about it. But when I think we react to things, it's the equivalent, if you like, of the uncanny valley, where when somebody looks at a computer rendition, what they're scared about is something that looks quite human but isn't really human, and we have a sort of a visceral reaction, which is known as the uncanny valley. So with that in mind, sorry, my pen has just fallen apart there on me. With that in mind, that's, I think, why we're having this kind of trust capability. Now, this month of October in the New York Times, this is what was written, is that I'm not sure about this, but it can design novel forms of life. I'd be kind of a bit concerned about that. And also now can build its own AI as well. So we are moving at that exponential pace that I talked about. And we're not going to be in a world where regulation is going to make a difference. The regulator is not going to be able to keep up with this. And where AI is really kicking in North America, in China, and in the Middle East, particularly with the North American administration at the moment, we're not going to see a regulation first approach to handling AI. Let's put it that way. And our fears go back to the early 70s around trust, which, if you think that H comes before I, A becomes before B, and L becomes before M. So the computer in Space Odyssey, that fabulous movie by Stanley Kubrick, was really calling out IBM. And spoiler alert, HAL takes over the organization. And in the famous line when he says, "Hey, David, I can't do that." So he begins to refuse to do what he, I guess, because it is a male voice, has been taught to do. So built into our own zeitgeist in these predictive sci-fi movies is the idea that the machines will take control, and of course Terminators 1 and 2 do mimic that as well. So let me play you this piece here, which is again kind of an uncanny piece of fakery that let me just come out of this I'll discard that, and I'll play just clip here because it isn't going to do it.
That's fine.
Oh,
It's it's a little embarrassing. You know, it reminds me. I was once in Russia. I ran into Gorbachev. He said, "You know, Mr. Movie Star, are you nervous?" I said, "No, Mr. Gorbachev, I'm not nervous. I don't." He goes, "Well, remember how much a polar bear weighs." I said, "Polar bear?" He said, "Enough to break the ice." It's the last time I've ever seen Mikhail Gorbachev. What's up, TikTok? You guys cool if I play some sports?
okay, we get the idea. Let me just go back to pointer options. So, pretty impressive piece of AI deepfakery in one way. Just, to have Tom Cruise doing an impersonation of Gorbachev is pretty uncanny. And, we can have some fun with that. I imagine Tom Cruise wasn't that impressed with it. Maybe he was. He looks a bit younger. But when you've got serious geopolitical issues, such as, Zelensky apparently surrendering, and done in such convincing fashion as we've just seen there with Tom Cruise. When I look at that piece of video, Tom Cruise is holding a little wallet with a piece of string that's swinging due to the momentum as he moves his hands. And I kind of look at the small detail of just how incredibly well that's done when I'm looking at the string moving back and forth. It's so precisely done. But as I say, if you've got that then at moments of where people want to feel at least on the Ukrainian side, that they've got a leader that is going to stand with them and for them, allegedly surrendering, then you can see very, very quickly the implications. So, as I said from the book from Francis Fukuyama, it's built on consistency. And if AI through various media, if you combine AI with social media, um, you've got incredibly strong potential for misinformation that goes on. And if it's handled by bad actors, and I don't mean by Tom Cruise, I think actually he's quite a good actor, but by people with bad intentions, then we do need a formula to handle this. And we live in a kind of a scary and complicated world. We know that. And AI can perhaps help us make sense of that, but certainly will also be a contributor to what we feel is kind of complex and scary. One of the questions that's come in, and please keep them going on the chat area, is how effective will regulation be? And I go, not at all, absolutely not at all. It will be too regional. So Europe will probably have a regulation first, as it always does. Hence, we don't have any growth in Europe. And you can't look for regulation coming out of China or North America at the moment. And the Middle East is really driving forth with its investment in data centers, wanting to make the Middle East, a center of excellence in the world of AI, which is, great for it. But regulation is not going to be at the races, I believe. I think we need it, and it'll be too late. I mean, look at the use of regulation in social media. Is it there sort of a little bit at times? And we've had social media actively now for at least a decade, and we're still playing catch up. So, AI will move at such an exponential rate. The regulators, unless they change their modus operandi, which is almost a total inconsistency or paradox, they're not going to do it. It's not going to be at the races. It won't make a difference. And here's where I think that it's inevitable, is because still the economic engine of the world is around North America, and in 2026 it's going to give a 1.5 at least boost. And this is one of these kind of reports you see, oh, something's going to be worth 9 trillion in 2 months time, that kind of blah blah you see sometimes. In practice, the investment in data centers is giving I'm giving mischievously a hormone shot to the stock market, and it's driving so much growth at the moment. And everybody's, or at least in North America, their pensions are built into that. So first of all, there is the economic argument. There is also the fact that AI is becoming part of the apparatus of state security. Now, again, I live in the UK in a liberal democracy, but still, AI is now, and facial recognition is being employed in my local supermarket to make sure I don't walk out without paying for some floor polish or something. So while that might be the ostensible and primary use of AI in terms of making sure there is no shoplifting going on, it will not be the only deployment of that particular instance of technology. So state security will also have access to those cameras, and they're also using cameras on motorways to make sure that we're not using mobile phones as we're driving along and so forth. And again, state security, again, in a liberal democracy, and it will change from region to region, will be using that access to cameras and that AI composition for different intentions and so forth as well. Again, I'm not making a value judgment on that. It's for us to feel good or bad about that as we go forward in life, but it is an absolute inevitability. If that's the case, my view is let's get pragmatic about it. Let's not start wringing our hands thinking, we're doomed, we're doomed. There's loads of good things about this. Let's just get on with it. And where possible, let's build in some of those defensive postures. Okay, take a look at this slide. This is from my good friend, Mark Zau-Sanders. And again, I can connect with some of the new research he's doing. He's a regular contributor to Harvard Business Review, where this appeared. And he's doing some new live research, which he's sharing with me on the usage of this. Just take a quick look at the usage of 24 versus 2025 and what's been changed. Okay, so as you see here in 2024, we were using it sort of like a search engine. Give me some ideas, I guess, for it's my friend's birthday coming up. Give me some ideas for a good birthday party or some sort of event we can do and so on. So there's that. And you see things then that kind of shot down in 2025 very, very quickly. And then for those of us that do work in learning, and again, it could be a good thing or it could be like, hey, it's after our jobs. Enhanced learning and building learning is coming up the charts, so to speak, quite quickly. I'm doing in part a master's degree in Cambridge at the moment, and Google Notebook LM is absolutely essential for my day-to-day life. I would be lost without it because it is able to read very dense text and make sense of it for me and turn it into really interesting podcasts based on that source material, mostly without doing any hallucinating. So it's incredibly helpful to me today, sitting here in 2025, and I'd be lost if it was switched off on me. Think about this one, though, therapy and companionship. Imagine a friend of yours that's going through a vulnerable time, and they say to you, I'm having a difficult time at the moment, but it's okay because I have an AI companion that's giving me some advice, and it's getting me through this difficult time. Okay, that's interesting. I would be, if it was a friend of mine, possibly mildly concerned because AI, at the very least, can hallucinate. And if you've got a vulnerable person plus an hallucination, you probably don't have a good formula putting it together and so on. So again, if you do feel that some of these are interesting or surprising trends, you can look this up on Harvard Business Review yourself. I'll share another piece in a second. There's a question here around what will it take to spur AI regulation? Well, there we go. Let me have a think about that as to whether anything is going to spur it. It could be that it creates an agentic AI version that starts running our security systems and our nuclear facilities and so on. I think that'd be kind of scary, and so forth. So there's some interesting current uses that we're seeing coming through at a personal level. I said earlier that I'm slightly skeptical, and I'll speed up a little bit now as time is moving on, that I'm kind of skeptical, but there are standards out there that are going on, and they will percolate through. I think they will be after the event. I think AI will be fully entrenched in our personal and corporate lives before the regulation makes much of a difference. And also as well, you need to ask the question, what's the will to regulate? Why are we doing this? And we've pointed out already some probably pretty good legitimate reasons as to why it needs some guardrails put onto it. I don't think those guardrails are going to be much if and when China go head to head. And at the moment, as you know, there's a negotiation going on over a series of tariffs, but also access to rare earths and minerals and metals, part of which go into robotics and go into EV and defense and so forth. But behind that also is this access to chipsets which will be driving the next level of computing power, which is sitting behind AI. My point being is that in part, the standoff at the moment between the new, if you like, Cold War going on is really around access to state level access to AI, because it will be able to run, if you like, the equivalent of an arms race going on. So where will Europe be at the races on this, and will they make much of a difference? I don't think so. I think it's important. I'm not an anti-regulator by any means, but I don't think it's going to make much difference. Take a look at this one. This is also from Mark for Harvard Business Review. And this is currently using, the classic XY axis, which is capability versus adoption. So this is live research at the moment. And again, if somebody wants to be part of this research, I can connect you with Mark, who can involve you in his research and so forth. But you're looking at, in the bottom left, folks that don't know much about it and are not doing much about it, to folks in the top right, those who get it and are actually beginning to use it. And you see that, in fact, this is quite polarized. Yeah, good point there on use of therapy, that it needs to be a hybrid component. Totally agree with you. That you have a human judgment that sits on it, that verifies it, that does quality control, that signs off on it, so that it may well be that AI can do some of the heavy shifting, if you like, or the heavy lifting, and then the human then oversees it to make sure that it doesn't go off the range and start delivering mad advice to people. And again, funnily enough, the book that's just dropped by Michael Connolly deals with this as a court case. So it's very interesting. So back to this area, which is corporate adoption. So you might think, well, so what about this? Because it's like, well, those that get it use it, and those who don't get it don't use it. And then there may be a little bit of risk here of people that don't know much about it that are using it, and so forth. But I think also that there's a message here, and certainly if you talk to Mark about this, which is that when you understand what it can do for your organization, you will use it. So being skeptical doesn't really help. So I guess the message here, to a degree, is an optimistic one from a corporate level. It's the equivalent of what we would say in England and Ireland: come on in, the water's lovely. It's okay, it's useful, and we use it. So at the moment, you've got a lot of people, probably I would say 60%, sitting in the bottom left-hand corner. If you talk to European banks, quite a few of them are very, very skeptical about use of AI, and will slowly begin to release it when they feel that it isn't going to have privacy issues, and so on and so forth. Okay. When you embark into the world of AI, and we're being dragged into it, so we're going to be pushed or we're going to be pulled, and I use this as a metaphor, we will get wet. We will make mistakes, of course, and it's just an inevitable part of the cycle of life. You're not going to have risk-free innovation. I know we would like risk-free innovation, but it doesn't really work. If you're going to have innovation, and AI is an innovation tool, you're going to get wet and so on. So let's look at some of the things that we begin to do to begin to mitigate some of these concerns that are going on. And these are some tools. And again, I'm not a shareholder in any of these, so I'm not suggesting them for any commercial things. But there are some good tools out there for watermarking content that an organization puts out, that gives you a reference point to begin to push back on what you deem to be unfair or partial or taken out of context or profoundly misleading data about the organization. So you can push back, but that's all well and good. But if you have the ability to put some anchor points in to start with, it gives you more traction in the debate to push back on it, if that makes sense. So again, organizations like Brand Yourself are exercised about this, which is how you go about proactively setting out your reputational assets in the world of noise and deep fake and all of the other stuff that can go on, and so on. So at a tactical level, I think it makes a lot of sense that as you push out media, that you've got some verification capability and so on. I had an idea last night as well, and I was thinking about why we don't really use blockchain. And of course, we do use blockchain a lot. We just don't talk about it so much because cryptocurrency is based on blockchain. And it's still really, well, it's been around, what, now 10 years more. It's still really a device for gambling and for bad actors to move money around without state scrutiny. But NFTs, non-fungible tokens, a few years back were getting all of the oxygen, where artists were allowed to release a digital version of their artwork and manage the provenance of that. So perhaps there's an idea around using blockchain to create a trusted and verifiable link between the organization and its stakeholders through the media that it transmits, and using blockchain to be able to do that independent and trusted verification. Because blockchain was about and has always been about building trust, actually. So there could be an idea around taking a leaf out of the NFT booklet and so on. But those are some commercial tools that are out there at the moment, from Adobe through to Feedly, to help you begin to push back on the level of noise and disinformation, and begin to think through what's our strategy in terms of what we're communicating. Let me just take a question here as we do that. Do you think there's a different generational are affecting AI opinion? I think younger generations have a different viewpoint on AI and its risks. They're more used to integrating and trusting tech into their daily lives. Now, I would agree with you that the digital natives ought to be more relaxed about it. And certainly when I saw my boys using AI tools in study, it was a completely natural flow in how they were using it to help them do some research and so on. I think as well, it is part of the zeitgeist that's contributing to a certain anxiety that's going on. There is perhaps a generational anxiety that's kicking in. It isn't just to do with the world of work. And I think AI is contributing to the feeling of some habit, and it may be that it's more weighted towards the younger generations, that the world is a scarier place, and we don't know what the future is going to look like. We can't lock in the future the way potentially we could have done. So I would agree that it's a natural tool, the way that mobile technology and then internet technology and so on over the last 20, 25 years has become an incredibly natural part of younger generations' life, from Gen Y to Gen Z, and probably we'll go back to A again at some point fairly soon. But I'm quite interested that, in fact, I see more anxiety around it than I personally share, who clearly I'm not Gen Y or Gen Z. I think also here's an idea that I had as well, is that we actually have a developed methodology for reassuring people about our corporate intent and also getting our corporate message out there. And that's the world from European pharma. And some time I've done some work with European pharmaceuticals. So basically, for those of you that are not sitting here in Europe, and I know I've got 11 minutes to go, and I will respect people's time, European pharma can't promote products directly to consumers, okay, like they can see in North America. So they work through a network of what they call key opinion leaders. And these are professionals in healthcare in various components. It could be in oncology or wherever. And they train them up on the product messages, and they speak on their behalf. And I know this because I have done this. This was part of my job, was working with key opinion leaders to make sure that they understood the value proposition from the product and were able to articulate it in a clear fashion. And nothing wrong. That's how European pharma actually operates. But if you think about it, that basically what the methodology around was to identify, recruit, train, and mobilize verified voices on your behalf. Okay, so European pharma has been doing this for decades now, but this is what they do. And my point I'm going to make at a corporate level, perhaps we can look at campaigns where we identify, recruit, train, and mobilize verified voices on our behalf, so that if there are moments of crisis in the organization where people are making accusations that will debilitate the levels of trust we have in the marketplace, we use these folks to speak on our behalf. Okay, but you can't invent them on the fly. You need to get ahead of this. You need to have a roster of verified voices that are trusted on different components that we care about. So perhaps we care about customer service deeply, or perhaps we care deeply about privacy and data privacy and so on. Imagine there was an accusation about us that was AI generated, so it looked credible, that was saying these folks don't care about our customers, or they are sloppy in handling our data. Now, you can deny this, of course, and quite quickly get your message out there, but it doesn't lack that much credibility, or it doesn't have that much credibility unless it's allied with verifiable voices. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to spin to this extra version here, which is the WHO during COVID, where there was a lot of misinformation and so on, not necessarily AI generated, but a lot of misinformation. They used what they call micro influencers. So people with smaller followings had extra traction and credibility with their audience. And they used those to push out messages around, for example, the safety of vaccines, and also the need to behave in particular fashions to make sure that COVID didn't spread as much as it did. So there's an example still within the world of healthcare where there was quite a successful strategy used using verified offices, verified voices to help push back on high levels of misinformation. And as I said earlier, if you go canoeing, you're going to get wet, and this is what's going to happen. So I'm going to take some questions now. Okay, partner with verified voices. So what I mean by that is, we've got a couple of minutes left. Take your brand values, okay, and deconstruct them. And presumably, most of you come from large organizations. Some part of the business has already done this. So what do we stand for as a business? Okay, what are the three things? Think of your corporate brand as a dartboard, yeah? And what's at the bullseye? What's at the center of the dartboard? What do we really care about as a business, as an organization? Now, if you have folks that are impugning that moment, and it could be that we care passionately about customer service, or we care passionately about being smart about anticipating market trends, or what have you. If you have pieces of outside information that are impugning that, you need to push back on that quite quickly. My point being is that you need to partner up. You need to, like in the old Westerns, you need to get your posse together to go out en masse, because you yourself, or even at a trade association level, pushing back on that is going to be less credible than you pulling out people from an academic organization or from a think tank or somebody who is ostensibly independent of you, but is speaking in your behalf. So you need a verified voice that has credibility with series of key audiences based on that moment in the dartboard, people who care about your own brand values, and you use those to speak on your behalf using social media, for example. So as I said, the key opinion leader strategy of European pharma, you can look it up. There are very developed methodologies and campaigns being used by them. You could look to cherry pick some examples of what they do in order to be able to have a defensive strategy when it happens that people are impugning core elements of your brand reputation. You can, yes, push back directly, but doing it in a more diffused and broader way will be much more effective than just doing a singular point of rebuttal, if you like. Okay, so here's my summary pieces, and then I'll leave a couple of minutes for questions, and then thank you. Really appreciate you putting in all these great questions. Rory and Juanita, I might also maybe type out a couple of more thoughtful questions, or sorry, answers to these questions, and wrap them into the slides and things that go back, because these are lovely questions coming through, and points as well. So when we're in a world of radical uncertainty, you're going to need consistency. And what I mean by consistency is an alignment between what you say today and what you said yesterday. Because if people said, hey, you're saying this today, but that's not consistent with what you said yesterday, that moment of inconsistency can be the fissure through which antagonists or bad actors push against you. That's the first thing. Or inconsistency between what you do today and what you say today. Saying, hey, you say you believe in these things, you believe in the environment, or you believe in whatever, innovation, but that you're behaving like this, that doesn't square up. So again, lack of consistency goes back to the idea of trust, which is the core element of Francis Fukuyama's book, which is that trust really is around consistency of behaviors against managed norms. In the world of the artificial, and we have been talking about AI, we need authenticity. What does authenticity mean? Well, the etymology of authenticity is autohentes, which is the Greek meaning self-creation. So we need analog voices. We need people that are real. And I saw this right throughout the noughties. Sorry for speaking more quickly. I saw this right throughout the noughties, the rise of YouTube and all of that in the digital world as it kicked into the 21st century had a paradoxical drive towards the authentic. So what I mean by that is that in the 90s, we used to want to have videos and corporate materials that were perfect and on point and beautifully produced. And then when YouTube came along, people wanted the real deal. They almost forgave fluff and not so well or professionally produced materials from the corporate, because what they wanted to see was the real deal. So the biggest crime in the 21st century wasn't poorly produced materials or mission statements or whatever. It was that you were inauthentic in your behavior. I don't really believe what you're saying. So you need to work on having spokespeople, not only verified officers and voices, but also people in your organization that speak with authenticity. And that's a certain level of credibility. They believe what they're saying and can communicate it in a passionate and authentic fashion. And then this also leads us down to the idea of credibility. Because once you've got consistency, once you've got authenticity, you've got credibility. There's no point in my saying to you, hey, you need to be more credible. Yes, we know that, right? But credibility is the currency you're going to need to deal with. And once you break trust, it's very, very hard to get it back. But the underlying, the key components of credibility are consistency and alignment between what you say today and what you said yesterday. Or if there is an inconsistent, to have a bridge between those 2 points. And authenticity, that is, that we're able to communicate to our stakeholders in a way that seems real and that connects with the motivations and passions of our stakeholder audience. Okay, that might seem very, very grand, but what it really boils down to is trying to stay out of inauthentic behavior and so on. And then to conclude, and Juanita, you've come up, so that's my message to get off the line. It's here to stay. Misinformation is a feature, not a bug. And how you tactically and strategically react to this is going to be really, really key. Your reputation is going to be your equity in this. It's going to be so important. And therefore invest in the tools that I've indicated and others as well to try and drive consistency and authenticity. Right, I'll shut up. Sorry, Juanita.
Thank you so much, Gerry. That was really amazing. We'd love to hear more about the resources. I will definitely share those resources with whoever's attending here, for all our attendees, and also the slides. We still have 2 more minutes, so I just wondered whether we have any more questions. Please feel free to type into the Q&A down at the bottom.
We've got a question just as we're doing that. I mean, how quickly can a startup enter into this space and have high quality curated content that is good as humans have been creating since the 80s? I think if your business model is based on creating content. In fact, I had a business which I sold to private equity that did this, so I have got some background in this. If you're in the content creation world, AI may grab your lunch quite quickly. If you're in the curation world, an AI agent can potentially start curation as well. And I know the wonderful people at Intuition do this very, very well. So I think you need to be really clear as to what runway you're going to arrive at and what value you bring to the table. So in the education space, yes, they need trusted. It could well be that there's a business to be made in the verification, if you like, trust pilot for educational content in a particular category, so that we know we're coming from a verified and trusted source. I think there could be some gold in there. In the content side and the curation side, that is probably easier for AI to mimic quite quickly. What advice do you give to professionals as next steps? What should we do in relation to working with AI? I think, first of all, emotionally try and embrace it. Look at your world of work and see what are tasks and what are those value-add judgments that you do. Look to see how you can recruit AI to help you in your tasks so that you can build your judgment, so you can dedicate more time to being the value add and so on. So get ahead of the curve, if you like, to avoid, if you like, being disintermediated, and to invest in yourself in doing the things that AI isn't so good at. And that is in terms of strategic thinking, insight, and self-reflective behavior. How well are we doing here? AI can't do that. It can't self-reflect. So that might seem kind of broad and vague, but the point being is try and move your aperture or your port of work away from reactive tasks, tactical things, to more strategic, value-add, insight-based material, and you're moving ahead of the wave that's coming your way. And AI also will create new jobs as well, of course. Okay, Juanita, I think we're just coming up on the hour, and although I've got an Irish accent, I've got a Swiss background, which means that I like to begin and end on time. So I'm going to look at all of these questions, and I'm going to give perhaps a deeper dive review of those. So Juanita and Rory, with your permission, I'll include just some Q&A into the slides that go back to everybody, because these are such great questions, and I want to kind of perhaps give a bit more thoughtful answer to them, and perhaps build some links in for further reading, for further evaluation.
Right. Thank you, Gerry. That would be fantastic. That will be useful for everybody. So we'll put that all together for all our attendees. And we'd like to say thank you so much. And we appreciate your participation. Just follow us on LinkedIn if you have not already. And we'll continue with more conversations with the Academy by Intuition. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.